I will always say spending your money on experiences and travel is so worth it because you can make more money, but you can't make more time. But that doesn't mean you can't be smart about it. Here's how I traveled the world without breaking the bank and how you can too. I've solo backpacked through Europe and Mexico and traveled plenty of the US doing these exact things, so these aren't just tips I read somewhere, these are things I tried and tested myself. Before you listen to any of these tips, you need to decide one thing of what matters more to you: convenience or saving money. A lot of the things on this list involve you giving up a little bit of convenience and compromising on that to save money, and that may not be a fair trade to you. So let's start with the biggest tip here, and that is where you sleep. Hostels are so underrated, and I think they kind of get dogged on sometimes for good reason. I definitely have a horror story, but they are so fun. You save so much money and you meet a lot of other travelers. The opportunities that you encounter when you are staying in a hostel are things you would never experience when you were staying at a hotel. That is huge to me, especially if you're like me and we're solo traveling. I wanted to be able to meet other travelers, and my only other option if I was in a hotel would be at like a hotel bar. I don't really drink. Some of my best memories from my travels were with people I met in my hostel. When I was staying in Dublin, I made friends with all of the girls in my dorm and we did a pub crawl together. And then they also had fun little performances in the lobby where one of the girls just grabbed a guitar and started playing a song. Through that, we made some friends with some other travelers there who were musicians. A lot of the people that I met gave me recommendations on where I should go to next. I follow all of these people to this day, by the way. You will make lifetime friends staying in hostels, but there are downsides, of course. Sharing a room with 10 to 12 bunk beds is not easy for a light sleeper like me. I would not have survived if it weren't for my noise-canceling headphones and a sleep mask. With that in mind, there's a big difference from dorming with 10 to 12 girls or in a 10 to 12 dorm that's co-ed. I always recommend getting the female-only dorm. It's nicer, it doesn't smell as bad, they're not as rowdy, and also you feel a lot safer. I also recommend finding the cubicle-style dorms if you can. Sometimes it's not a possibility. When I stayed in Slovenia, there was like 2 hostels in the entire city and it had to be co-ed, and I met a really creepy guy, but I survived. Always have your wits about you. I used Hostelworld to book all of my hostels. Always, always, always read the reviews on that. In Hostelworld as well, when you book a stay, you can connect with people who are also staying at the hostel at that time. There's like a group chat for it. It's really great. But if you are staying in a city like Ljubljana, Slovenia, where there's not a ton of hostels that are the best options, I would probably just book a hotel in that city opposed to a hostel, because there are some cities, I will say, that a hotel room is cheaper than a hostel. So always do your research and look into things. I have a whole video rating the hostels I stayed in, so make sure you go check that out. If you want to take that even further, you're gonna like this next tip: work exchanges. Even just with hostels, I knew plenty of people who volunteered at the hostels they were staying at in the kitchen or cleaning up, whatever it was, in exchange for their stay there. Other things like workaway, farm stays, all of that sort of thing. These places let you trade a few hours of work in exchange for your stay. I haven't done this myself, but I've had plenty of friends who have. I had a friend who did it in Hawaii and Australia. She loved it, but obviously with that there are downsides. Always do your own research, always read reviews. There are a ton of options out there if you want to travel. So that covers where you sleep. Now let's talk about how you actually get around, because I think this is where I saved the most amount of money for my Europe trip specifically. If you're traveling Europe and want to hit a lot of different places, I highly recommend the Eurail travel pass. This is their train system essentially, and I purchased the 5-day pass. I know they have a lot of different options. I've logged almost all of my Europe destinations. I haven't posted my Switzerland and Croatia one yet. If you want to see that, let me know. It'll just be about 4 years after the fact. 3 years after the fact. I bought the 5-day pass. Basically, this means you can take as many trains as you want to in that day. And it's not 5 days in a row either. You can use these 5 days whenever you want. So I made sure to plan out my travel days to get the most out of it. I literally only flew twice on my trip, and it was because taking the train either wasn't possible or it didn't make sense. So I flew from Ireland to Scotland and then from England to Switzerland. But I used one of my train passes to go from Scotland to England, and then I used my others to go from Switzerland to Slovenia, and then Slovenia to Croatia. But for example, if you're staying in Switzerland, you could use one of your days to travel to Germany, to travel to France, to go just see other things, and you save a lot of money. But I will say flying within Europe is still pretty cheap. I think my flights are around $40. I also loved trains because you could relax on them. It's way more comfortable. You have more room, you get fed, you can get up, go to the bathroom, and it's beautiful. The views from the trains are like unlike anything I'd ever seen. I didn't go visit Austria, but I saw a lot of Austria by train. The downside here, obviously travel takes longer. It would have been much faster for me to just fly from Switzerland to Slovenia. Also, I only stopped in Slovenia because I wanted to go to Croatia, and that was the only way that made sense. The travel days are long. I think my longest travel day on the train was like 13 hours. And it's also unpredictable, just like any type of travel. When I was going from Switzerland to Slovenia, there was an avalanche. So my second train of the day got canceled and I had to get off of the train in the middle of nowhere in Austria and figure out how to get shuttled onto a different bus that was taking us where we needed to go. I have no idea how I figured it out, but that's the one thing about traveling is you learn a lot about yourself and it really helps you build your confidence. That's an entirely different video. If you want me to talk about my solo travel experiences, I will happily, because it made me a much better person. But again, it made for a really good story. In the moment, did it suck? Yes, but I saved a lot of money and I got a good story out of it. Again, this is where the convenience versus budget comes into play. Also, this won't be the situation for everybody. All of my other train rides were without hassle. It just was Austria and an avalanche had to happen. For the flights I did take, here's how I saved money on that. I always use Google Flights and I really recommend being flexible with it. So either being flexible with the dates that you're traveling or the destinations you're traveling to. And both of these things you can play around with to see what's cheapest. For the dates option, I wanted to fly into Dublin because that seems to be the cheapest place to fly into from the States. I clicked Dublin and I said anytime within the next 3 months, and I saw what the cheapest days were. On the flip side, if I had a specific day I wanted to travel, for example, when I was flying out of Ireland, I clicked the week that I wanted to travel. I didn't need a specific day, and I looked in Europe where it was cheapest for me to fly to. It just so happened to be Scotland. But I did this a few times. Even when I had my train pass, I remember when I was in London, a girl was like, Malta is beautiful. So I just clicked around to see when the cheapest days to go to Malta would be and other cheap locations to fly to. Timing your trip well and being flexible on where you're going to can save you so much money. But again, I understand some people have a very specific time they need to go and a very specific place they want to go to. That's your convenience, but you're going to pay for it. On the note of timing your trip, going in off-season will save you so much money. I did my Europe trip pretty much in March, end of February to early April, and I saved so much money on flights, hostels, trains, food, all of it. I think things run like 30 to 50% cheaper in off-season. Now, I'm not saying go in the middle of winter, but like the shoulder seasons are perfect. Basically just outside of peak summer or like spring break. Make sure you think about those things. The other great part is you avoid the worst of the crowds. It was not super busy, but the downside there is Croatia was like a ghost town. There was like nobody in Split at all. Once you're actually there, one of the biggest ways people blow their budget without realizing it is food. It is very easy to go out to eat all of the time because you want to try new places, it's more convenient, it's quicker, you're hungry, you don't want to think about cooking, all of these things. I totally get it. I definitely had my fair share of times I went out to restaurants, but especially with staying in hostels, almost all of them have kitchens. And they also almost all have fridges where you can store your own food in. It was actually so much fun for me to go to the grocery store in each destination and see what the locals were eating, and I just had a lot of fun with that, cooking my own meals and stuff. I actually found one of my favorite foods ever in Switzerland through doing this. I had never heard of it before and I've yet to have it since, but it was so good. And then a few more tips that don't need their own section but will save you a lot of money. Take free walking tours. I think a lot of people get sucked into the tourist traps, which I do understand. Some cities you want to do touristy things, like London. I wanted to see the Buckingham Palace and I wanted to see the London Eye, but you don't need to pay $100 just for a walking tour. What I did in the places I wanted to see the touristy things is I just hopped on one of those double-decker buses. This was perfect in London, and you can put your headphones in, listen to what they're saying about it, and it just takes you to all of the different places. You can get off when you want to and then get back on without paying again, and it was perfect. You only spend a few hours doing this, and then the rest of your trip, you have time to do other things. I don't like to do touristy things all of the time. I really like to find the little local spots. That's another way you save more money, is getting out of the super touristy areas. On the note of trains, taking overnight trips. Overnight trains and overnight buses will save you a lot of money because they're cheaper, but also it saves you an entire night on accommodation. Using an eSIM instead of getting all the data roaming charges, there's an app called Eurail, I'm not sure, I used it though, and you can purchase eSIMs depending on where you're at. It is way cheaper and it is super easy. I think it takes like 2 minutes. Another sneaky charge is your card, your foreign transaction fee. Look into that if your bank will be charging you for those things, and if so, get one that doesn't. Those are some of my tips. I have 100 more if you want to hear them. Let me know and I'll do another video. But again, it really comes down to what's more important to you, convenience or budget. But I also have to say, don't always go the most convenient route. I definitely understand people being like, I don't want to stay in a hostel, I don't want to share a room with a bunch of people. Some hostels have single dorms where you can get a single room, but still be in the hostel. I really recommend it. Push yourself out of your comfort zone at least once to get that experience and meet new people and try new things. It was very uncomfortable for me at first, but I am so glad I did it. It's priceless. I learned so much. I met so many cool people. It was one of the best experiences of my life, and I really highly recommend it. Get yourself out of your comfort zone sometimes, not just to save money, but to make yourself a better person and get life experience. Traveling on a budget does not always mean the trip will be worse. A lot of the times it will be way better than you could have ever planned for. Planning everything out does not leave room for unexpected surprises that are actually really incredible. Like I said, I can make a lot more videos on this with all of the tips that I've learned from Mexico, Europe, Costa Rica, traveling the States, all the things that I've done. Make sure you go look at the travel vlogs from those as well as the hostel video and comment down below what questions you have. Also, I'd love to hear some of your favorite travel memories, for better or for worse. That's a whole separate video I can make. If you want some story times, let me know. I'll see you in the next one, friends.